Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
Well, guys, in the final days of the campaign season with Democrats facing potential doom in both the House and the Senate, President Biden is trying one last-ditch effort to turn the party's fortunes around, in addition to his democracy speech. Frankly, this is what I've been begging the party to focus on all along: the Wall Street royalists, the corporate profiteers who've been taking advantage of the current moment to price gouge. Specifically, Biden decided to dip his toe in the water of going after some of the worst corporate actors, the oil and gas giants. Take a listen.
Oil companies' record profits today are not because they're doing something new or innovative. Their profits are a windfall of war, the windfall from the brutal conflict that's ravaging Ukraine and hurting tens of millions of people around the globe. You know, at a time of war, any company receiving historic windfall profits like this has a responsibility to act beyond their narrow self-interest of its executives and shareholders. I think they have a responsibility to act in the interest of their consumers, their community, and their country, to invest in America by increasing production and refining capacity, because they don't want to do that. They have the opportunity to do that. Lowering prices for consumers at the pump. You know, if they don't, they're going to pay a higher tax on their excess profits and face other restrictions. My team will work with Congress to look at these options that are available to us and others. It's time for these companies to stop war profiteering, meet their responsibilities to this country, and give the American people a break and still do very well. The American people are going to judge who's standing with them and who is only looking out for their own bottom line. I know where I stand, and I want to let you, I'm going to hear more from me about this when the Congress gets back. Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate it.
Biden's team is 100% correct about the record-breaking profits the oil and gas giants are raking in. So the combination of high post-pandemic demand and high prices has led to an astonishing $19.7 billion profit for ExxonMobil. That's just in the third quarter. Chevron, no slouch either, raking in a record $11.2 billion in profits. Both of those represent massive increases quarter to quarter and year over year. Now, Biden's statement and the threat of a windfall profits tax, it's part political messaging and it's part economic policy. On economic policy, the theory is that oil and gas companies, even while raking in record profits, are too spooked by the possibility of recession or new lockdowns in China to invest in significant production increases, no matter how much money they are making right now. What's more, these companies can see the writing on the wall with the green transition away from fossil fuels, which has actually been accelerated by the war in Ukraine. In the short term, Russia's war has upped the need for fossil fuels and dirty energy sources like coal. But in the medium to long term, it has made a compelling case to the world they'd better get serious about renewables to protect both their economies and their national security from future shocks of the type they are currently experiencing. By the way, side note, this is precisely why we should nationalize our oil and gas industry to up production in the short term, wind it down for the long term, but you can go back and watch my previous monologue on that one. Bottom line, the natural workings of the market are not going to lead these companies to up their production to help us out in the short term, no matter how record-breaking their current profit margins. And the Biden administration, they've already tried inducing increased production through carrots for the industry by using the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to effectively guarantee a price floor. With the windfall profits tax, the administration is now trying to break out the stick. And in my opinion, that is long overdue. Basically, they're saying, nice profit margin you got there, be a shame if something happened to it. The threat of a windfall profits tax is an attempt to induce the gas companies to produce more and lower prices in order to avoid that threat of a costly tax. Now, there's no guarantees that the threat or the reality of a windfall profits tax will compel increased production, but if these giants are not going to up production anyway, and the Biden admin obviously not bold enough to actually nationalize them, at least they could use the tax proceeds to invest in a future that doesn't depend on these companies or on bad actors like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and Venezuela. Now, on the politics, a windfall profits tax is a clear political winner. Just take a look at this. Back in March, when a group of House and Senate Dems unveiled legislation which would impose that windfall profits tax, a poll found an astonishing 80% of voters would back such a measure. An even higher 87%, including majorities of Republicans, said they want politicians to, quote, crack down on price gouging and excessive price increases by oil companies that result in higher gas prices at the pump. Just listen to how the crowd responded to Tim Ryan. He's the Democrat running a closer than expected race for Senate in Ohio when he brought up a windfall profits tax, and this was at a Fox News town hall.
I think the fact that oil companies are making huge profits and having stock buybacks right now, while average person here is paying nearly $4 a gallon, I think that's wrong. And I think we need to crack down. We need to crack down on that.
Now, apparently, some critical players in the White House have been paying attention to the incredible power of gas politics for a while. Our friend Jeff Stein at the Washington Post has a great inside look at how the second most powerful man in the White House, that would be Chief of Staff Ron Klain, became obsessed with gas prices. Jeff writes that, quote, many aides say the president's popularity is closely tied to a single economic number. They could be right. He goes on to explain that Ron Klain starts his day at 3:30 a.m. checking the AAA website for the daily average gas price. He then eyeballs the gas station prices on his morning commute, continues checking in and tweeting about the daily trends multiple times around his busy day. Klain's focused on the political case for a gas price obsession, and the case is pretty simple. When gas prices have been high, Biden's approval has been low. When gas prices dropped, Biden notched his highest approval rating since the early honeymoon days of his term in office. As I write this, gas prices have been mostly trickling slowly down. The national average is now about $3.76. Not exactly cheap, but better than when they were topping $5 a gallon, getting kind of close to where they were back in 2021. Fortunately for the White House, two of the most expensive markets in the country are in the swing states of Nevada and Arizona. On the other hand, Georgia boasts some of the cheapest gas in the country. Could be an interesting little experiment on Election Day of whether gas prices are as significant a political indicator as the White House seems to think they are. As Jeff writes, economists say there is something puzzling, if not irrational, in the political power of gas prices. Gas typically amounts to just 4% of the average family's budget, with food and housing typically representing larger shares of how Americans spend their money. Gas appears to have a disproportionate electoral impact in part because of its visual prominence and the frequency with which consumers must buy it. The cost of housing, medicine, even groceries can be relatively opaque, while the price of gasoline is emblazoned on large public signs in every part of the country. So the current White House prayer down the stretch is that the downward slow drift of gas prices will translate into a disproportionate impact at the polls. That maybe this last little economic lift before Election Day will provide them with a boost that lets them hang on to the Senate. That perhaps this late downward decline is coming at just the right time and isn't showing up yet in the polls, which, as we've been covering, have been drifting steadily towards the GOP. Or maybe, with voters having a lot of legitimate economic concerns outside of gas prices, and with Democrats mostly fixating on abortion and in a final pitch on democracy, it's all too little, too late. Not gonna have to wait long to find out. The thing that's a little perplexing here, though, Saagar, is this whole piece of cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.